Yes, record to the cloud. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning, this early morning. Hope you have your coffee or your hot chocolate. In my case, I have hot chocolate, but we'll wait a few minutes because folks are still trickling in, but this is going to be a very, very informal webinar because we just want you all to know that we are more than, scientists, these professional people. We are actually people who like to have fun. So this will be a very educational webinar, but at the same time, we're having fun. So educational, informational, but we're having fun. I think Murray would agree with me.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just going to give people like a minute or two to like get in here and then we'll get started.
Yeah. And if you want, while we wait, it would be really cool to see where everyone is from. So you may not be able to use the chat function, but you can use the Q&A function, which we'll be using for the majority of our webinar today, or our workshop rather. So
yep. Where are people from and what is your like field of study or like background that you're doing, just so we can get an idea of who's in here.
And so if you weren't able to attend any of our other webinars this week, don't worry, they are all recorded and they are on our YouTube channel as we speak. So feel free to watch them at your convenience. Feel free to comment. We love interacting with you all. So, and also feel free to, share them as resources, anything like that. They are open and they are ready for you to use. So
Absolutely. Okay, so do you think we should go ahead and start?
We can, just to respect everyone's time.
Okie dokie. I'm going to like really quickly just share our agenda with everybody, just so you can kind of get an idea of what this workshop is going to be like. We planned for an hour and a half, but we might not take that whole time. It's just like, we want you guys to have like time to ask questions, as many questions as you want. And we're going to start off with Lauren's presentation, which will be focused more on adult communication and like talking to the media and things, followed by my presentation, which will be more about social media and like planning activities for kids. We'll take like a brief little break and have like time for questions before we jump right into like a little activity we have for you guys that hopefully you will find helpful. And then we can wrap up in the end if there's any more questions or comments to have. We are recording this, but only until the end of our presentation portion. We will have our presentations posted to YouTube, and then we will link also a little bit of resources for you guys, such as books to read to help you out, children's training opportunities that we found, and just like various things to help out with science communication. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And then Lauren, I think we're good.
All righty. Let me see here. I am working with double screen, so you will have to let me know if you can see my screen. And I'm going to put it in presenter mode. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
All right, wonderful. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. So as Murray said, I am going to be talking to you all about science communication geared to more like young adult / adult audiences. So my name is Lauren Pharr. I use the pronouns she, her, and I am one of the CEOs and co-founders of Field Inclusive. So welcome everyone. Again, thank you for joining us all this very early morning. So I'm just going to be talking about really my experiences in SciComm, walking you through the various things that I have done as a science communicator that have reached, adult audiences. And then at the end, I will give you all just a little bit of tips if you are interested in exploring, science communication, if you want to get more involved with it. So that's where this presentation will go today. So at first, I want to start off with, who am I? So I am a scientist by training. So I hold a bachelor's, master's, and I'm currently working on my PhD. All of those are centered around anything to do from environmental biology to fisheries and wildlife. I am a DEI advocate, so I currently attend North Carolina State University here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I wear many hats as a grad student. So being a DEI advocate, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, I serve on many committees when it comes to DEI. I am a mentor, so I have taught a course in the past for undergrads on exploring the environment. And currently right now, I am mentoring students from HBCUs. And with that, I'm sort of helping them navigate what it's like coming from a historically Black, institution to a predominantly white institution, because it is really, really different. I'm also a nonprofit owner. So along with Murry, we founded Field Inclusive in August of 2022. We have been told this multiple times. It is very rare for graduate students to be completing their studies and also founding a nonprofit. So we are a very, very rare bunch. But I say all this to say that aside from all of these things, I am also an award-winning science communicator. So aside from my research, I am heavily involved in science communication. So how SciComm found me. So previously, I had no formal training in science writing or science communication before I really got really deep into SciComm. So I say all that to say you can literally start from anywhere. You don't have to have any formal training in science writing or science communication. At the start of the pandemic, I found myself starting a blog. So at the start of the pandemic, we were all, cooped up in our houses, stay-at-home orders. So along with my website that I had launched, my personal website, with that website, I started a blog. So this was on like Wix. So if you know the website Wix, it's very user-friendly. That's where my website started before I moved to WordPress. So on that site, they had a blog feature. And so I started just writing anything that had to do with wildlife or birds, because I am an avian ecologist, so that's what I study. I study birds. So anything with wildlife, anything with birds, and anything with grad school, because I am a grad student. So I started doing that. A few people started subscribing to my blog. And then with the launch of Black Birders Week, people and organizations began to find my name online, and they started reaching out to me because they found my blog and they saw that I had written a little bit. And so different organizations began to reach out and ask me, hey, can you write this blog post for us? Can you write this article for us? And usually it was, talking about either birds and wildlife, or talking about, us trying to get to a more inclusive outdoors, because again, this was during Black Birders Week. So with all that, I have found myself in many science communication roles. So currently I hold 2 editorial roles with North Carolina Sea Grant. I've been with them for 2 years now. What was supposed to be a semester-long internship has turned into 2 years of nothing but joy. I find all my SciComm really as a way to step back from my research and have my head in a different headspace, and just it's sort of my happy place, if you will. And then I'm on the Wildlife Society's, or TWS's, editorial advisory board. So I've been with them for about 2 years now. And I'm also a freelance writer for the Nature Conservancy's Cool Green Science blog. So there I get to write different blog posts about various things, but really I am one of their bird-focused writers. So I write anything that has to do with birds. So this slide, I really just want you to take away from starting off. You don't have to have any formal training in science writing or science communication. You don't have to have a degree, you don't have to have a certificate, but I will emphasize, maybe later on, once you get more into it, maybe you would like to seek out some formal training or get a certificate or things like that, because there are ways to make your writing better that, depending on where you're coming from, people who actually, do this for a living, who actually got trained in it, who are formally trained and who hold these kind of positions, these editorial positions, or actually got a degree in communications, they really can help you into making your writing better. So just keeping that in mind. So these next few slides here, I'm going to go through with you all really what I have done as a science communicator with different outlets, if you will. And my goal here is to convince you that if you aren't yet involved with science writing or science communication, but you want to get more involved, my goal with this presentation is to convince you really why it's important, really why we need more science communicators. So everything that you see from here on out is either a story that I've written, a story that I've been featured in, or anything that has to do with me and my work. So the first thing that I want to talk about is science writing. So these are various pieces that I have written for different outlets. And really with science writing, what we are trying to do is break down that really sciencey, those sciencey articles that we write as scientists that's filled with jargon. Our goal is to break that down into words and language that the general public can understand. Because if you're not a scientist, you really probably wouldn't know what we're doing if you read a scientific publication. So one of those goals is to break down that science into a way that a general audience, the lay readers, that they can understand. So with science writing, the goal is to really communicate various things that are important in the science world currently. So as you see here, in the majority of these articles, I'm talking about climate change. So for both of these pieces, for Sparrows and Rising Seas and Wings of Change, which is the story that actually made me an award-winning science communicator, I'm talking about climate change and its impacts on birds. So there have been many research studies about climate change and birds, but again, if you go to those research studies and you read it, you may not be able to understand it if you haven't had any formal training as a scientist, as a researcher, when it comes to avian ecology and climate change. So with these different kinds of articles, I am able to break that stuff down where you can understand how climate is impacting these bird populations. So aside from that, I've written other different things talking about, tips for attracting backyard songbirds. A bird feeder will bring you joy. That was for Wired magazine. And then eBird, I got to, with science writing, that includes telling your story as a scientist, how you got to where you are. So with eBird, they asked me to write about my journey as a scientist, as a Black woman in this field, how I even got to where I am. So that is some important things that you can get with science writing. So that's one outlet. Another outlet is interviews, podcasts, and films. So interviews, for example, National Geographic, they reached out to me wanted me to give, some insights when it came to the pandemic and us scientists and how the pandemic has impacted our work and research as scientists. PBS. So PBS came out and filmed myself doing my research. So I currently work with the federally endangered red-cockaded woodpecker, or RCW for short, and I'm looking at climate change impacts, as a matter of fact. But PBS came out this past summer and they filmed me, and they filmed, what I do as a scientist, as a researcher, as a Black woman. I was thrilled because it's not every day that you see Black people doing what I do on TV. So I really have to give it to PBS for being willing to share and, tell this story to others. And then you have podcasts. So podcasts, once you get past like your first or second, it's really, really fun. The host of the podcast is the person that's really going to set, the environment of how the podcast is going to go. Because really, if you've never done a podcast before, the first thing, you get on there, you're kind of nervous. You're sitting there like, oh my gosh, what if I say the wrong thing, But the host of the podcast will be, if they're a good host, if they're a great host, they will reassure you that, hey, We can just have fun. It'll be fine, if you need to start over or anything, because 9 times out of 10, they have really, really great editing tools that can, edit it out and make the podcast worthwhile. So for myself, I've been on a number. So I've been on, American Birding Association, Ologies, Fancy Scientists, the list goes on and on. So interviews, podcasts, and film is another form of science communication. Representation and awareness using science communication. Now, this one is really, really important. And it's one of the reasons why we here at Field Inclusive wanted to do a workshop about science communication, because there have been many, stories and outlets that have covered, wanting us to get to a more inclusive outdoors, or not even that, but how, again, going back to climate change, how climate change is impacting various, individuals and their societies and their communities. So in these, I was either featured or I wrote different things when it came to, conserving a culture. So talking about the Gullah Geechee, how climate change is impacting their communities, troubled waters, that was around the same thing, but talking about how flooding impacts, underserved communities. Breaking systemic barriers, this one would go right along with Field Inclusive Week. So this one is really focusing on 4 Black scientists in the marine science and biology fields. And they sat down and they talked with me about the hardships that they have faced, either while doing field work or in an academic setting. Black birders harness social media to push for field safety. So this was one that myself and Murry were in, talking about what we're talking about now when, it comes to Field Inclusive and what we stand for. And again, looking at Discover Magazine, how young scientists are pushing for equality. So science communication in this sense can, help you with communicating the science when it comes to getting more representation in writing, when it comes to being focused on, again, like I said, these underrepresented or historically excluded, communities, really highlighting what they are going through. Science communication can do that. And again, the whole point is to break it down so that the general public can understand, so that way it's more meaningful, right? It's not, again, filled with all of that jargon that you're just reading it and you're just like, I don't get it. In these stories, I am able to break it down to where you can read it and you get it and you can empathize with, these people that I'm telling the story about. And last but not least, I have social media. So I have a very great social media presence on both Instagram and Twitter. My social media, I cater it towards really audiences who either like birds, like nature, or who are grad students. So I would say that is my audience. And I'll get more into that when I go over my last slide with some tips that I have for you all. Again, if you're wanting to get more into SciComm. So again, my Instagram, I am able to use it sort of like TikTok. So I'm not on TikTok. I find Instagram, Instagram is sort of where it's at for me. My followers engage with me all the time and I absolutely love it. And that's my goal. So on Instagram, I'm able to use what they have, those Instagram reels. So it's kind of basically like TikTok, but for Instagram. And I'm able to film. So what I do is, the first thing that I started doing was when I'm outdoors and when I'm doing my field work, I will film what I'm doing with these red cockaded woodpeckers, because when people ask me what I do and I say, oh, well, I'm usually in the woods, chasing woodpeckers and climbing trees, I get a sideways look like, what is that? What does that look like? What do you mean? And so I got the idea of, well, I could maybe just start filming what I do during my field work, post that on social media, and people will see that and people will get it. And, a lot of us scientists, again, I know that we're so busy in actually doing the science, but when we do the science and then we publish it in an academic journal, we usually just leave it. And I mean, it's, it's serving its purpose with us needing to have publications for, our academic standing or whatnot, but it's not really serving our general audience, the people that we really want to, reach, and the people who we really want to know what is going on when it comes to, the environment per se, as in my, as in my case, as in my example. So although I know as scientists, we're busy. I just wish that more scientists would take the time, just maybe even a little bit, to somehow bring a form of science communication, into their lab, into the academic setting, and actually get to show the general public and other audiences what they do as a lab. Because looking at it, then you can relate, then you can actually see what I'm doing. And it's more of just being, jargon on paper, because you actually get to see what I'm doing in a very user-friendly way, right? So, and then I do the same thing on Twitter, but nowadays I've kind of moved away from my Twitter, and I just really use that to sort of advertise any publications, or like seeking grad school advice, or different things like that is usually what I use my Twitter for. But again, social media is another outlet that you can go when it comes to wanting to be more involved in science communication. So takeaways, again, why is science communication important, or SciComm for short? So that's our hashtag, is SciComm. So if you see that, that means science communication. The whole broad thing that we're trying to get to here is catering to a general audience. That is the main goal. Okay. In order to cater to a general audience, you're able to, again, make science more accessible, to showcase the work that scientists are doing using videos or photos, to discuss and talk about more sensitive and important topics. So again, looking at that representation that I mentioned, and then as well as to inspire the next generation of scientists and researchers. I can't tell you how many times that someone from a minority group has seen what I do, whether it be an article that they came across, or whether it be my social media, that have reached out to me and said, wow, I have never seen, I didn't even know Black wildlife biologists existed. Because, when you Google it, usually it's not Black people that you see, right? And we're trying to change that narrative. We're trying to change those photos that come up in Google Images. We're trying to change all of that. And so I find that SciComm has, become an important part of my life and what I do as a researcher, because I have seen the impact that it has on, various people. So I'm going to leave you with this, because you're probably wondering, okay, Lauren, this is great, but where do I start? Because I don't know where to start. So usually 9 times out of 10, wherever you want to put, some sort of science writing, whether it be a magazine or pitch it to, a news station or what have you, 9 times out of 10, the first thing that they're going to want is a pitch from you, and, to write a pitch. And usually what this is it's, you basically telling your idea about what you want to, write about, or what you want to film, or what have you, but you're dumbing it down into a couple of sentences, because you have to keep in mind that when you pitch this stuff, they're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of pitches every single day. You want your pitch to stand out. You want them to read it and go, huh, there's some potential with this story, or, there's some potential to make this a video, or what have you, or, to be on a podcast or anything like that. I will say that the easier way, which has happened to me, is it has helped that people that I have just a very high presence online or on social media, that they usually find me. So I don't really have to go and, pitch anything when it comes to my research, because they'll usually come across some article that I've done for another outlet, or, my PBS feature or what have you, and they'll find me and they reach out. So that's like, in your perfect world, that's a great thing. And you should, take advantage of that. But usually it will go back to you writing and pitching an idea to a news outlet or a magazine or anything like that. So we have in the agenda that Murray showed you at the beginning, we have some resources for you, but I did just put these 2 resources here because it goes along with what I'm talking about when it comes to pitching. These 2 books, The Best American Science and Nature Writing and The Craft of Science Writing, are really, really, really great. And I highly recommend them to you if you want to get into SciComm, because they break down all of these tips that I'm telling you, and they give you a step-by-step of, what you need to do or look out for when you're, starting to want to get into science writing. And I really loved the chapter, or the little tidbit that they have on pitches. So they basically, let you know how to pitch, or, what to stay away from when pitching, and different things like that. So I would highly recommend those 2 books. Social media, again, finding your platform, whether it be Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Again, like I said, I'm not on TikTok. I look at it for my pleasure, but I'm personally not on TikTok. Twitter, I use for more of, my academic stuff now. Instagram is where it's at for me because I get to use those Instagram reels and really capture what I'm doing as a scientist, whether it be in the field, whether it be like different, like grad student things that only grad students would get, stuff like that. The goal with this is to find your niche or niche and cater to your audience. So if we're looking at my audience here, I would say that my audience is mostly either bird or wildlife lovers or grad students. That is like my main bulk of my audience. So when I make my videos, that's what I have in mind, that I'm catering to, because these videos will be, of interest to that audience. So finding your audience, finding your niche that's what's going to make you successful when it comes to social media. And with that, consistency is key. Posting consistently is key. But I will say it is okay to take breaks from social media. It is more than okay to take breaks because it is really hard to keep a social media presence. Like it's hard work. It's really hard work because, you don't want to lose that, algorithm on Instagram, and you don't want to lose that stigma of you being, of your social media presence. But consistency is key into growing your audience. And at the same time, them expecting things from you, that's really what's going to keep them engaged. Attend any science communication workshops or join science communication groups. Anything that has to do with science communication when it comes to workshops or groups, I highly recommend you join. And then if you ever want to receive formal training, I highly recommend any internships, fellowships, maybe even get a degree in communications if you want. All of that is really, that will actually step you up in your SciComm game. And again, as I reiterated at the beginning, I had no formal training in science communication, but then once I started getting into it, I really wanted to, get a little bit more training. And, so that's where my internship with North Carolina Sea Grant came in, my position with the Wildlife Society. So different opportunities like that to make you a better communicator, because the people that are teaching you, they have a degree in communications or they have a certificate or what have you, and they know what to look out for. So you get to learn from them. And you get to keep that in mind, and that ultimately makes your writing and your science communication better. So that was my presentation on catering to adult audiences. So feel free to contact me. My contact information is here, my email, my website, my social media, as well as Field Inclusive's email, website, and social media. But as Murray said, this presentation will be up on our website, so you will be able to refer back to any of these things there. So I thank you for listening, and now I will pass it back off to Murray.
Awesome presentation, Lauren.
Thank you.
All right, now let me try, hold on, let's see. I am going to start this in my presentation mode, and then we're going to share screen. Share. Hold on, that's not what I want to do, sorry.
As you all can see, we currently have it together in this early morning.
Oh yeah, we're experts. Okay, please let me know if you can see just my slides. Does that work out?
I can see your slide, but then I also see like your next slide, unless that's what you want.
Oh, it is not. Okay, hold on.
You're good. You're good.
Hang in there with us. How did you get your presenter view to like not show?
I'm not sure. Are you in PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
I had just clicked the presenter, like the top one,
Mm-hmm.
presenter view, but it's okay if that way that you had it. I mean, it's fine, but
Okay. You know what? We're just gonna do this.
yeah.
We got this. Okay, and we're just going to do
Yeah.
regular share.
There you go. Now it's good. Now it's good. You're good.
Awesome.
You're good.
Okay. So as you probably already know, my name is Murry Burgess. I am a current PhD student in fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology at NC State. And with this presentation, I will be talking more about a little bit more about social media that Lauren touched on, and also how to start engaging the youth with your science communication and some environmental education activities. My background is all in the wildlife side. My undergrad degree was in wildlife and fisheries from Mississippi State, and I went straight into my PhD at NC State with fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology. So I have no formal training in children's education. All of my expertise is just through experience in the things that I've been doing in addition to my research. So first, these are just some of the examples of what my science communication has been. The bulk of mine has been me talking to the media instead of like writing stories for the media. I have done many interviews, I've done podcasts, I've been written about in different magazines and publications. And so this is it's really weird to see yourself on TV and like the first time that you start that, but it's also really, really cool because you get like so much feedback from people saying that they really enjoyed how I worded things and how I like represented myself and the field. And so that is one of my huge motivating factors to get people to enjoy science. I also have a blog called Not a Snake Doctor, which I am currently workshopping to like kind of relaunch by the end of this month. But, you know, I'm supposed to be also writing my dissertation, so that's been like taking a little bit longer than expected. But there are some blog posts on there that I hope to continue really soon. That's my science communication. And now for more my environmental education side, I do a lot of children's workshops. And my goal with these workshops is actually for me to do like as little talking and lecturing as possible and to get the kids doing an activity. I have done in-person workshops with kids as young as 2nd and 3rd grade to kids as old as like undergraduates, college level students. And so my kind of expertise is all over the place. And as you'll see, as we get further into this presentation, since my focal species is barn swallows and I focus a lot on birds and bird banding, that's kind of what I've themed a lot of my workshops as. And finally, I am a children's book author. I first published a book called Why Wolves Howl in 2017. Which you could find on Amazon. And then my new book series focuses on a little Black girl named Sparrow as she roams around her neighborhood learning about different groups of animals. The first one, Sparrow Discovers Birds, is going to be coming out this summer. And the next draft, I have a draft of manuscripts due soon for Sparrow Discovers Reptiles. So we are getting the ball rolling on that as well. And I am also in the mid-process of workshopping a middle grade graphic novel series. That one is going to be about like this kind of team of animal superheroes who go around solving environmental issues. So children's books are like by far my favorite thing to work on. As a little kid, I absolutely loved reading books about nature or like watching documentaries about nature. So it's super excited to be able to contribute to that now. And shout out to my awesome illustrator, Tamisha Anthony. This is a sneak peek of what Sparrow looks like and what some of the art in my books will look like. So I'm excited for that. And my purpose in doing all of this, we all know science communication is important, but like I said, like my primary goal is to like finish this PhD and be a scientist. So these are the purposes that continue to drive me to step outside of that role and do a little bit more. Definitely representation for the next generation of scientists and naturalists. I said that I loved watching nature documentaries and like Animal Planet as a kid, but I like never knew for the longest time that people actually get degrees in wildlife and that people can actually do stuff like that as a career. And so I just really want to be able to spread that message and like get more diverse groups of scientists interested. Also, as you probably already are aware, there's a lot of negative views about scientists or like science itself. A lot of people think science is like exclusive or like incorrect, like, and so I just want to like put out the view that like scientists are just like regular people and also make science more accessible and understandable. My network and community has been exponentially grown ever since I started doing SciComm, and so that's one of the things that I love. And also, one of the research shows that if you talk about nature, if you get people into nature, they will feel more and more connected to nature and are more likely to participate in environmental behaviors. So that's always a huge plus. So this first little section that I have is going to be more about science and social media. And I'll give you some like general do's and don'ts about like how to get started, what platforms you might want to use and stuff like that. So first of all, platforms. You have to first, I think, decide kind of who you want to talk to, and that will kind of inform which platform that you want to use. Like, for example, if you're just trying to target like a general audience or like more adults, I would suggest like YouTube or Facebook. But if you really want to like target teenagers or like younger kids, then like I would recommend like TikTok or like Instagram Reels and other platforms that allow for those like little bite-sized contents and videos. And again, there's many avenues that you can go through: social media, making videos, doing podcasts, hosting workshops, or like going into classrooms or into educational programs for kids. So in general, some of the things that you really want to try to incorporate is first to get to know your audience. Like I said, with the platforms, like you'll get to know like who you're talking to and who is like likely to engage with what your message is. And as you continue to do it more, you'll know your audience more, and it'll just like repeat that loop of like strengthening your relationship with the audience. The second part is to tell a story, which I'll go into more detail in a minute, as well as how to make posts accessible so that you can reach a widest audience as possible, and opportunities for audience engagement. Listen, you can never go wrong with cute animals. If you have like a really cute study species or like a really cool, interesting species, like exploit that. Like people are going to love to see as much of that as possible. And finally, my biggest advice is to just be your authentic self. Like people really appreciate when scientists are genuine and when they can see that people are just like them. Like I fully embrace that I am a young Black woman with like locks, and like I came from Southern Mississippi, and I just like try to incorporate my background and who I am into my science communication. So let's go into some of these a little bit more in depth. First, making it all about the story. So the first thing you want to do is like construct a narrative around your science. As scientists, we get kind of caught up in like the academic style writing with like, here are my methods, here's the background, here's like the results. But you're gonna want to take that information and craft it more into like a story structure. Highlight only the important parts and like have a beginning, middle, end to like what you're trying to tell people. Always include personal anecdotes. Again, this emphasizes the point that like scientists are human. And of course, like make it fun and engaging. Don't Be Such a Scientist in Houston, We Have a Narrative by Randy Olson, I think are super great resources to help you get started. We're about to get a cameo from my dog. Randy Olson is a marine biologist turned filmmaker, and so he has kind of experience in both kind of the science realm and the science communication realm, and he highly recommends the and but therefore method of storytelling, which I'll let you learn more about from him if you're interested. Next is about accessibility. So this is for people who might have some type of disability or might need some assistance with accessing science. And some of the ways that you can make your posts more accessible to more people is to include subtitles or transcripts for any videos that you make. When you post images, use some alternative text. And with your alt text, like you want to be as descriptive as possible. Like, for example, if you post a picture of a bird, don't just say like, this is a picture of a bird. You would want to be a little bit more specific and say, this is a picture of a gray egret standing against foliage. If you need help figuring out like alt text, I know on Twitter, you can like tag these accounts and they can like help you out or like generate alt text for you. The second part is don't overuse emojis or hashtags when you post. If somebody is using like a text reader, then that text reader is going to read out like every single emoji and like every single hashtag. So that could like get kind of annoying for them and they won't engage with your media. When you do use hashtags, hashtag in camel case, which is capitalizing the first letter of every word. And finally, avoid making things like in a different font or like a bold or italicized text. Just use whatever the default settings of the platform are. So that'll be easiest to understand. I mentioned posting cute animals, but I would like to give a warning about being careful when you do post animals, because just people love animals in general and they don't want to like see them hurt or think that they're being mistreated or anything. So my rules of thumb is like, don't post animals that are distressed or injured. Don't post like dead animals. And of course, there's always exceptions. Like I did post this picture on the bottom of me holding an ivory-billed woodpecker. So this like is clear like a study specimen of an extinct species. So it's like an exception. Also be careful with like captured or contained animals. And if you do post things like that, always note the ethics and like legal permits that you have or like the reasons why that this animal is contained and like make that part of your explanation and your story. And just to emphasize again, it's not always like cut and dry on what photos you should post versus what you shouldn't post. These two photos are examples of photos that I thought fell into the gray area for me, but I ultimately ended up not posting them. The first one, I am drawing blood from a sparrow. And even though it's clearly in a laboratory setting and it looks like a very controlled process, I just personally made the decision to not depict any blood on my social media. And in the second picture, again, it looks like a controlled process, a scientific process, but this video was screaming at me the whole time. And so this photo looks like it's in distress, and I just didn't want people to think I was hurting the bird by banding it. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of switch gears, and this last section of my presentation is about how to kind of craft educational activities for kids. If you're like me, like I don't have kids, I didn't grow up around a whole bunch of little kids, and I don't have any like formal educational training. So what even are these like tiny humans that exist? Like, how do you talk to them? And so I'm going to break down the different kind of age groups of kids and give you some example activities of like what you can do with them. So the first group is the elementary age, 5 to 8. And so these kids are going to have a little bit more limited muscle development and motor skills. So when you teach them, you want to create like, simple tasks, things that aren't too complicated for them to do. These kids are like concrete thinkers. So it helps to use like your 5 senses and activities and like relate activities to things that they might already know or be aware of. Try to avoid like abstract concepts and things like that. They love to be active and to like get physical and like have something to do. But also with that, they are most likely to need like help doing the activities. So make sure that you provide opportunities for individual attention and for kids to like kind of go at their own pace. And with that also, these kids, like there is no criticism or failure in this group. the goal is just to get them to do the activity, to experience something. They don't have to finish, they don't have to be correct, like we just want them to do it. An example for this is I do is a bird lunch bag. So it's like I put a whole bunch of different like pictures or like items inside of a lunch bag, and I talk to them about like, this is what a bird might eat, but like, look at this maybe trash item. It kind of looks similar to what a bird might eat, but like, should they eat it? And that kind of gives them an activity to like kind of sort through the bag, or maybe the items are already out and you have the kids choose what should go into the bag. And that way you can talk a little bit about bird ecosystems if you want. You could talk about like pollution if you want. So there's a lot of things that you could bring into this activity. The next age group is like middle school. So these kids are like still mostly concrete thinkers, but they can of course grasp a little bit more. If you want to introduce like a totally new concept or like a brand new abstract idea, keep it to 1 per activity. They should be able to do that just fine. These kids are easily motivated and eager to be part of new things. And so participation in like a simple community science project is a good option for them. They would be very excited to participate in something that's actually being used towards like, real science, real data. These kids are kind of distracted though. They easily jump from topic to topic. And so I would recommend short activities that are guided and like keep them focused. If you have a longer time to fill up, then like maybe do multiple short activities that you can like break up. And these kids are also really sensitive to criticism. We can like emphasize task completion with this group, but like no criticism, like, incorrect answers don't really matter. We just want to get them to do the task and finish the task. An example of this is a mock banding station. This is probably my absolute favorite activity to do. I just have like a little data sheet for them with like different measurements to take on these stuffed animal birds. And they really enjoy like spending time like measuring the wings and like measuring their head and like putting a little fake bird band on the leg. This has been really successful, and it allows kids to like go at their own pace. They can band as many birds as they want to band, and they learn a little bit of hands-on techniques and stuff about why scientists band birds. The next group is your junior high school group. And these kids are capable of like very abstract thought. They can do like more complex work. They can do longer work. And so participation in community science projects is a really good option, or also allowing them to design their own experiments surrounding a theme or like the lesson that you're trying to teach them would be really cool. They are less dependent on adults for help and like are more likely to go to their friends for help. And so this is a good stage to introduce like group projects and like teamwork that they can help each other out with. And these kids are like moving towards like independence and adulthood. A lot of them think that they are little adults already. And so just go ahead and encourage them to do like larger scope or longer activities with as little guidance from you as possible. Again, designing their own experiment is a great idea. Backyard bird surveys are really fun to do with this group. It allows them to kind of enter their own data. If you give them an app like eBird or something, they can like record their own data, upload their own data. And it also provides opportunities for expansion, like we're gonna do a bird survey and then we're gonna like plant this tree or like add this resource and like come back and see if the bird community has changed at all. So great opportunities to incorporate more science there. And finally, we have like ages 15 plus. These are basically adult kids. They have mastered abstract thoughts. They interact, they can write on an adult level. And so if you have the opportunity to incorporate real equipment or like allow them to like handle or touch real animals, this is the best age group to do that with. people are also usually planning for their futures and like looking towards what career they're going to go into. So if you can like kind of turn your educational opportunity into something that they could maybe put on their resume or cite as like their first professional experience, that's a great bonus for them. They really are very conscious of like society and like politics and the things that are going on in the world. And so if you have like a project with concrete goals and like a purpose, a project that's going to be actually used, that is also another great bonus for them. And finally, they don't need much adult supervision. These can be like self-designed independent projects if you want them to be. Also very great for like long-term projects and stuff like that. Example of this is Miss Knitting Workshop. Lauren and I conducted this workshop so far every summer with the Youth Conservation Corps in our area. We teach them all about Miss Netting and we do examples. We actually catch the birds. We actually get the birds out of the net and we actually like ban the birds and we let the kids release them. And we go through like the real process of doing this. So how do you even find opportunities like this? In my experience, collaborating with your local museum, Girl Scout troop, or like just your local schools has been a really huge success. They are always looking for people to come teach and to come provide new experience for their kids. And this is also a great way if you want to collaborate to increase your visibility, increase your professional network because you're making new connections with the professionals who teach. It's also a great way to like get to know your local community and like meet their needs in terms of like what science is most important to the people around you. Another great benefit of collaborating with other organizations is that these organizations are most likely to already know the audience. So you can kind of eliminate some of that iffiness of like who's even going to come to this presentation, like what age groups, what they are interested in. And I will also say that like everything that I said about these kids is a generalization. There's going to be variation within every age group. Of course, I have met like a 9-year-old who was like so super into asking me questions about ornithology and like she knew stuff about like aviaries and banding already, which was like so impressive to me. And I've also met like a 19-year-old who was like unfamiliar with like reading millimeters on a ruler. So there's going to be variation in who you're working with. Collaborations are also like a great way to get practice. My best advice is to just like go out there, get started. I learn very much by like doing and like changing things from workshop to workshop. And so it's been like the best way to just like engage and refine my own science communication. And fair warning, these people are going to want you back again and again and again because they are just going to be so appreciative and like love your work. And so just to sum everything up, the reason that I do this is to share knowledge with those outside of academia. We publish papers all the time, but we want that information to get to like the general public, to like kids who might be interested in pursuing this career. It's a positive experience with nature that promotes like learning and connection and ecological behavior. Studies have shown that children who engage in this stuff are more likely to either do ecological behavior, vote for like ecological policies, and like just spend more time in nature, be healthier. And finally, for me, I want to be the change and representation that I want to see. This family came over to my bird banding station at the museum. And this little girl in the orange, she kept them there like way longer than they wanted to be there. She was so into it. She wanted to band like every single bird on the table while the parent was just like, okay, come on, we're gonna move on. But she was like, no, I want to band. And so it's spark moments like that that just like warm my heart and make it the reason for why I do this. And with that, we are going to pause and take a little break. There's time to ask questions. You can contact me with all of these things here. And I will leave that up for just a second before I stop sharing, and we will look at the questions.
Awesome presentation, Murray.
Thanks.
I really want to meet the young person that you said knew about like aviaries and stuff. Like she was like so young, and I was like,
Yes.
oh my gosh. That was not me, but
Right. It's like I knew none of this stuff.
kudos. Kudos. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, everybody. So we'll if you have any questions for us, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. But if not, we'll just take like a little short 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for our activity that we have for you all.
I see that there's a question about having any favorite SciComm books recommended for beginners. Yes. I'm going to put this list in the chat real quick, but we will also link to like all of these resources afterwards. But I have a whole book list that I think is fantastic for getting started. My favorite out of all of those might be Getting to the Heart of SciComm with Faith Kearns. That's a really good book. How did you figure out / start the process of writing a children's book? So I have been the weirdo who loves writing all of my life. I was writing children's books before I could like actually hold a pencil. Like I would say what I wanted the words to say and my mom would write it down. So for me, just starting just has like always been a part of what I like to do. But actually starting like the publishing process and like actually making that final product, it came about through my network. It's like my advisor knew somebody who connected me to the publishing industry. And from there, I got a literary agent, which has just been like the best avenue for me because she like handles all of the like book pitching. She handles like a lot of the editing process and like acts as the mediator between like me and the publishing house. So if you like want more information about all of that, like please email me. I am happy to give you like a whole spiel about getting into the publishing and literary process. Thanks. Another question says, do you recommend any specific workshops? I think Lauren has taken more workshops than I have. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so really, it's hard for me to answer depending on where like you're coming from. So the workshops that I've taken have been at our school here at NC State that has anything to do with like science communication. So Murray and I have taken a course that was really helped us out with SciComm. It was like geared towards science writing, but it really helped us out with science communication also. So depending on where you are, if you are at if you're lucky enough to be or if you are at an institution or that may have those kinds of workshops, look out for any of those. I will also say that, so for example, and again, we will link all of these. Murray, if you want to link the
yeah, I just put Project Wild and Project Learning Tree in the chat. Those are good nationwide training programs that help
wonderful
like teach about like wildlife for kids and like forestry and like environmental resources for kids that offer both training programs and like lesson plan resources.
And so yeah, but so there's also there's a SciComm group. So it's geared towards grad students more, but I believe like anyone could be a part of it. They have conferences every year that they're centered around science communication and getting more in depth with that kind of stuff. our state SciComm group, we have Science Communicators of North Carolina. So again, that's geared towards North Carolina. So depending on where you're coming from, you may even have like a Science Communicators group like that, but you know, specific to your state. So that's also another thing that you can look into as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully so far that that answered your question a little bit, but it's hard and it stinks, but like it really depends on, yeah, kind of where you're based, the specific groups for your state, if that makes sense. Or, you know, again, if you are at an institution, they usually should, especially if they have a communications major or department, I would think that they would have some, you know, kinds of workshops and different things like that led by professionals in that field. So
Yeah. Hi, Will. Thanks for coming to our
Will's here.
Yeah, Will's question, he says, as a community outreach staff at a museum, I am constantly looking to bring new voices into our public outreach programs. What is your advice for finding new voices that are not already established? Yeah, I would say my best resource is like just scrolling endlessly through Twitter. Like it might be a little bit tedious, but that's seriously the best way that I have found like new people. A lot of our speakers for this Field Inclusive Week I found through Twitter, and a lot of them like haven't done like a whole lot of previous like communication or like workshops or anything. So that for me, that's my answer. It's just like scrolling through social media, like finding people who might be willing to talk.
Yeah,
who have before.
I second that. And especially finding people who, you know, especially like the work that they do may not get, you know, highlighted or recognized as much. That's also, you know, really, really cool. So I know this one person, first off, I don't know why I didn't think about like researching snails was a thing, but like, so she researches snails. She does like periwinkle snail work. And I'm doing like a little tippet, like, or a thing for her for North Carolina Sea Grant. And I was just so like, oh my gosh, I did not know that people were out researching snails. I mean, it makes sense, but just, you know, I believe I heard her talk at a conference. And so I reached out to her and I was geeking out about these snails. I was like, oh my gosh, the way you talk about your snails is the way that I talk about my woodpeckers. So like finding people like that. I mean, when's the last time you read a story about snails? Like, when's the last time? So yeah, finding, you know, people looking at their work, really recognizing that, oh, this work has not been, you know, highlighted as much. That's a really great opportunity to highlight, you know, someone different that people may not, you know, have heard of and know about the cool work that they're doing. I sat here, I was like, I really think a lot of people would love to know about your cool work that you're doing with snails, because I never even knew that was a thing until I heard you speak. So that is that is one option. So I agree with Murry 100% on that.
Awesome. And we'll answer this one last question before we move on to our activity.
Sure.
This person asks, are your graduate advisors supportive of your SciComm work? And do you have any suggestions for working with somewhat difficult advisors?
So I laugh at this because, so my story, I'll give you the Spark Notes version. When I came here to state, our advisor, so we have the same advisor, Dr. Karen Cooper, well-known citizen scientist. When I first came here to state, she's a part of the public science cluster. So we have a public science cluster group here at North Carolina State University that's focused around science communication and things like that. So when I first came to state, she was talking to me about this group and talking about public science and talking about outreach and talking about SciComm. And I was just not hearing it. I was like, I just want to come here and do my research and that's it. I don't understand why science communication is important. And then, yeah, now look at me. I mean, you would never have known that I at first was just like, I don't understand the meaning of this. I really, really don't. So all that to say that we were lucky enough to have an advisor that was already, you know, aware of science communication, knew that it was important. She allows us to do a lot of things aside from our work. And I would have to applaud her from that because like you said, there are a lot of, you know, other advisors or other, you know, people who don't, and they want you to focus on what you're here to focus on. So
Yeah, for the difficult advisors part of your question, the first thing that came to my mind was like, if you've ever written like a grant or a proposal or something, there's always that like broader impact section that they want you to write about. And so you could always like talk with your advisor about like what the broader impacts of SciComm are. Just like sharing research with like a broader audience, if it's getting more people to participate in like your research, or if you want to like diversify the field with your research, or just like whatever is your goal with science communication, you can like talk to them in the form of like, this will enhance our research, this will get us more grants for our research, like we have all these broader applications that we could do.
And like
hopefully that
finding,
works.
yeah, and going off of that, like finding, maybe there's a way that you could find somehow to involve people. Because I mean, when you're, I mean, we're talking like, you know, oh, just writing or just doing presentations, that's science communication, but really like what Murry does with her bird banding stations, involving people in your work and your science, finding ways to do that, that's science communication, because you're obviously going to be talking to them about, you know, what you're doing, how they can help out, you know, guiding them. That's also SciComm. So if there's maybe any way that you could involve people in your work in any way, shape, or form, that's also another thing. And then it hits off of what Murry said about having something to write about for that broader impact section. Because usually with grants, that's one of the things they're going to ask about is how have you impacted the public with your work and everything like that. So you could go, yeah, with that and see if that makes a difference. So, but all the best, but feel free if you want to reach out to us any other time about that. We'd be more than happy to answer your questions and help you out there.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me pause this or stop this recording.